by ITA.
Good morning and welcome to the Future of South Los Angeles Conference. It is the first of what we hope to be the beginning of exchanges between the community and the city of Los Angeles around the issues of job creation in South Los Angeles. My name is Reverend Eric Lee. I'm the President and CEO of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Los Angeles in the state of California, and I'm honored to be the moderator for today's conference. We have a large panel, and so my job is to attempt to move us quickly to a rich and lively dialogue about job creation in the future of Los Angeles. Thank you very much. We're going to start with introductions for the panelists, and let us start with my right. I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves, who they work with, how long they've been there, and what their particular job focus is. I'm asking that it be no longer than 3 minutes in the introduction, and then we'll get into a dialogue about job creation and the future of South Los Angeles. So if we can start with Jean.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Lee, and I want to thank Commissioner Valerie Shaw for putting together this esteemed panel, and I know that what we're about to offer today will be beneficial to the community. I'm Jean Franklin, the Executive Director of United Job Creation Council. We are a large collaboration of faith-based organizations made up of churches, community-based organizations, faith leaders, and community residents all around advocating for jobs, job resources, and training for our local community.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Reamer. I am the director of the Bureau of Contract Administration. That is a bureau in the Department of Public Works. I also hold the title of the Inspector of Public Works. We're responsible for overseeing contracts in the city of Los Angeles, specifically those dealing with the city's capital improvement program. We also monitor living wage and prevailing wage, and we're responsible for certifying minority and women-owned businesses.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Mary Campbell. I'm the Assistant Vice President at the University of Southern California. I oversee both staff recruitment and professional and organizational development. We work with faculty and staff on that. In that role, I've been at USC for 10 years, and in that role, I oversee the President's community hiring initiative for the last 7.5 years.
My name is Ernest Roberts. I'm the Executive Director of PV Jobs, Playa Vista Job Opportunities and Business Services. We focus on construction workforce development, advocating the major construction projects for set-asides for at-risk youth and adults and local hiring. And then once we get the commitment, then we try to move local community residents into those positions created. We just recently moved into South Los Angeles on 41st and Main to service Spa 6, where most of our clients come from.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Larry Frank. I'm a Deputy Mayor for Neighborhood and Community Services. I'm really excited to spend the morning with folks on this panel who have put a lot of their lives into this work. My responsibilities are oversight of two of the departments that actually have the best capacity to leverage jobs in the local community. One being the Community Development Department that is responsible for about $45 million in Workforce Investment Act funds doing workforce development. They also are responsible for the community development block grants that come into the city, so the primary federal dollars, and then working with the Bureau of Contract Administration, which has the ability to leverage contracts, city contracts, for the benefit of LA residents. And then I get to work with Greg Irish, who's the Executive Director of the Workforce Investment Board, who does the policy work around workforce development with his team of 51 commissioners.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lola Smallwood-Cuevas. I am a project director with the UCLA Labor Center and coordinator of the LA Black Worker Center. In my role as coordinator at the Black Worker Center, we work on building power at the grassroots for workers in our community. Our focus is Black workers, as we see that they represent some of the most disadvantaged and vulnerable workers in Los Angeles. We focus on research and advocacy, in also building dynamic partnerships and coalition between labor, policymakers, workers, community-based organizations and faith-based organizations. And our purpose is to really see how do we change and build peace and prosperity in Los Angeles by ensuring that all workers, particularly those workers who are the most vulnerable, have access to quality jobs, can work free of discrimination, and can have strong power and partnerships to transform a lot of the low-wage, unregulated work in Los Angeles so that they can be transformed into opportunities of real careers for folks to support themselves and their families.
Good morning. My name is Greg Irish. I'm the Executive Director of the City of Los Angeles Workforce Investment Board. It's a city commission of 51 members appointed by the mayor, the majority of which are members of the private sector or employers. The chair is also an employer, but the actual composition of the WIB includes folks representing the educational community, organized labor, community-based organizations, et cetera. The WIB has oversight of $60 million of funding for workforce development. That funding comes from federal sources, private institutions, private foundations, as well as local money in terms of the city's general fund to fund a myriad of workforce development programs throughout the city. We have actually submitted to the City Council, which was approved yesterday, a plan for the expenditure of $50 million beginning July 1st through June 30th of the next fiscal year. We share with oversight of those programs, establishing policy for how those programs operate with the mayor and the City Council. And again, the mayor, all of the members of that board or commission are appointed by the mayor.
Good morning. My name is Greg Burks, and I'm the Regional Director for the South Region for the Community Development Department. And the department, as Deputy Mayor and Mr. Irish stated previous, is responsible for managing the WIA, which is the Workforce Investment Act programs through the City of Los Angeles, also the Community Development Block Grant programs, and other grants focused on workforce development.
Thank you. Thank you for all the panelists and their participation here today. 3 years ago, the City of Los Angeles launched what is called the South Los Angeles Initiative. And we're in the third year of a 5-year strategic plan that focuses on development, job creation, repositioning of industrial lands in the South Los Angeles area. I'm part of the advisory board, which has met regularly and received reports from the City of Los Angeles on the progress. What we'd like to do today, when we talk about the future of Los Angeles or South Los Angeles, particularly in reference to jobs, is to understand what the challenges are in South Los Angeles with job creation. We'll start there so that we can then determine whether or not the initiatives that are currently in place in the City of Los Angeles are speaking to the needs of the community, and see if we can come up with an idea, a strategy that is workable for the City of Los Angeles, particularly South Los Angeles, in this era of economic crisis. One of the things that we have to understand is that when this initiative started 3 years ago, it was right when recession began to devastate the fiscal climate in Los Angeles and the state of California. And so I want to start with the community members of the panel to get an assessment of what you feel the challenges are in job creation in South Los Angeles, and give us an assessment of what you think the future looks like for South Los Angeles in this economic crisis. We can start with, I'd like to start with Lola Smallwood-Cuevas from the UCLA Labor Center and the Black Worker Center.
So I mean, I think what you laid out is correct. I mean, in our research and looking at the challenges and problems of South LA, and particularly as it relates to Black workers, I mean, it really is a result of 30 years of living in this vacuum created by the deregulation of the industrial corridors that really are connected and help to feed the communities of South LA. It also, at the same time, there was the deunionization of a lot of that industry, so where you had careers established, where people could go into a plant and start work at a certain salary and then move up the line and end and retire with high wages and benefits, all of those opportunities disappearing. At the same time, you have the lack of investment and obviously disinvestment as businesses that were supporting those families and in supporting those industries also left the community. And so, you know, the challenges that, you know, as we look at, you know, the economic conditions today and we talk about the Great Recession, the reality is South LA has been in a compounded recession that has been happening and deepening since, you know, the last plant closed, the big Goodyear plant in 1982. And so I think that when we think about those conditions, what has happened is not that industry has completely disappeared. When you drive through those corridors, and I recommend anybody drive along Central Avenue through some of the back alleys of Avalon, you do see industry. The factories are bustling, but you can clearly see the degradation of the work. You know, people are in slave labor. There is no regulation in terms of their health and safety. And once you move beyond that reality, the next reality is, you know, very low wage service work, retail, right? So you have an industrial unregulated corridor that's creating slave wages and slave jobs for folks in the community. And then you have an influx of development that's bringing more low-wage retail work that also doesn't provide career opportunities. And so, you know, I think the challenge is how, and all of that does sort of feed into, you know, the educational challenges, right? Because what are you educating people for, right? What are the real jobs that are in the community? How do people become inspired to want to graduate to work in a sweatshop, right? And then what are the training and skills that they need to find work outside of that environment? I also think you begin to see, you know, the issues of lack of work, creating opportunities of obviously poverty, and the issue of violence and hopelessness that happens as a result of that. And you also have, you know, just a very difficult job of attracting and bringing in revenue in industries that can create real opportunities. So I feel that, you know, in addition to job training and development, I think there has to be a real plan around how do we improve the industries that are here to be good jobs that Los Angelinos can raise their families on, that can help to build and spur economic development. You know, in our experience, when African American workers have done well, the community has done well because they've had wages and discretionary income to be able to help to stimulate the local economies in their communities. And so how do we help to look at where the jobs are in our community and make sure that they're standards? How do we help to ensure that where there are opportunities for public infrastructure building, creating our own New Deal and strengthening New Deals and strengthening government to create jobs? How do we ensure that those investments are in fact creating good jobs in the community, and not just on the infrastructure side, but where we're doing small business loans, where we're doing everything? How do we ensure that when there's a public dollar spent, that a good job is created? And then I think we also need to think about the folks here talked a lot about the job training aspects, and I think, you know, as important it is to have the hard skills and the soft skills, what we're finding, particularly in areas like construction and other industries, it's important for folks to have networks, right? So you have the hard skills, you have the soft skills, but how do you connect with people who are actually involved with tracking and creating work and creating mechanisms for mentorship and also for network around where the jobs are and how do we connect folks to those jobs.
Good. Thank you very much. There was a lot in there that we can put our hands on. Education being one of them, and people graduating but not having a place to go, not having a quality job. And so I'd like to now go to Mary Campbell, who is with USC, and to hear your assessment and the work that you're doing in South LA. You're the largest employer in South Los Angeles at USC, and so if you could share with us what you see as the challenges facing South Los Angeles.
Yeah, thank you. I'm far less knowledgeable than people like Lola of some of the intricacies of the dynamics in the environment, but I really appreciated listening to everything that you shared and the thoughts that came up for me in particular, and in our work in trying to be successful at connecting community members with good jobs at USC, for example, is we can do a better job of integrating these streams of support that come from a variety of locations. We work with the local workforce centers quite closely, but when we got to asking around, we of course realized that there are dozens and dozens of groups doing great pieces of work that are connected to so many elements. So for example, at USC we have 5 community initiatives, and they're education, safety, community hiring, economic development, and so on, and they're all really very interrelated. So in our conversation, it really came around to in this past year that the next level for us is to make sure that we're not working in silos in these efforts, and that we make sure that we reveal clearly how education begets jobs, begets economic prosperity, begets safety in the community, and so forth. And I think there's a lot of ground we can take in this next phase by really up-leveling the degree of integration and partnership with all of these groups, because it's not about repeating what anybody is doing, but really connecting the dots. And the other point I'd like to make, it comes up for me personally a lot, so it might just be a bent of mine, but I also oversee job training, professional development at USC, and there's a whole spectrum of a whole equation of success that really amounts to being successful ongoingly in seeking employment, in successfully landing employment, and also retaining that employment and moving on and up in your professional trajectory. And the part that I find is often missing, there's the soft skills, there's the hard skills, and the technical skills, and they're all very, very important. And we focus on those probably better than anything else. But it occurs to me, and we work on this with employees at USC, that there's what we call personal mastery. And that is sort of the human being and the mindset that you're bringing to any job and to any environment. And so that includes things like communication skills and the philosophical orientation that you have when you come in. It's really our humanity. And there's a lot of development that can be done on that spectrum as well, and it really makes for a nice complement, because in these challenging environments, when you talk about the rampant hopelessness, for example, I think that we can maybe do a better job of hitting that head on with a different stream of programming, and it really will complement the soft and technical skill training in these populations, I think. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to hear from Ernest at PV Jobs and what your assessment of the challenges we face in South Los Angeles, particularly with the construction industry.
Well, first let me thank you for having me here. Thanks, Valerie, wherever you are. SPA 6, where we're located, which encompasses most of South LA, that's the service planning area, covers most of South LA, has the highest rates of unemployment, has the highest rates of poverty, has the lowest rates of graduation from high school, lowest rates of college degree attainment. SPA 6 is lowest in the county in terms of performance, and it's reflected in the community itself. We see a lot of gang violence, we see hopelessness and despair, which is one of the reasons why we moved into the area. If you take into consideration the tens of thousands that are released, for instance, from prison every year, most of them come to South L.A. You talk about the 31,000 that are going to be released as a result of the downsizing in the state's prison population. Most of them are coming to South L.A. That 31,000 is per Sheriff Baca. The needs down there are huge, and I don't see any way to correct these needs. And they're more than just the educational. There's family issues. There's a loss of the parents in the family, single-parent families. Some of the high schools in the area have a 70% rate of students who are foster kids. That's unbelievable. It suggests a significant social change that we have experienced in Los Angeles since I was a youth. The only way we're going to tackle this thing is through a significant collaborative effort, having government and private nonprofits and faith-based organizations and everybody coming together to try to work on various aspects of this program. It's going to require significant investment, as Lola intimated before, from the private sector, from government resources. I mean, if you think about the work source centers, I don't think, if you look at the work source centers in South L.A., you have the one that's just come up, the Chicano Action Center, which is, what is that, Vermont, is it? I mean,
CSAC?
Yeah.
Broadway, that's right.
Broadway and Vernon, though, right? Is it Vernon?
61st.
61st? And then the next one heading south is the county one on Avalon.
Oh.
And CCI on Vermont, but that's on the other side of the freeway. What I'm saying is in the core area where the need is the greatest, we need more services. We need more workforce development services, more economic development. The CDD can certainly play a role, or the CRA can certainly play a role in helping to invest more in the area. These are the kinds of things that will bring jobs. The construction environment, which is the environment that we work in, I know we've done almost 4,000 placements in the construction trades in the last 12 years, and an additional 1,300 paid internships, we call them, for LACCD, most of them from South LA. But the need is just great. The need is just too huge. It's too much for one organization or one entity to handle, and I just think we all need to come together to try to tackle these issues.
Okay. Thank you. From the community, the last person I'd like to address the issue of the challenges that we face in South Los Angeles would be Gene. And since Ernest mentioned that there has to be a collaborative effort between government, faith-based, and community organizations, I'd like for you to address from that segue.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to take it directed toward a certain group of people within our community, and that's the African American, the black males. With the statistics that's coming out concerning unemployment with the African American community, it's at epidemic levels. And I will phrase what Cornel West talks about, mass. When you're talking about the African American male, African American community, it's really mass incarceration, mass unemployment, mass high school dropouts. So there is a sense of, it's not hopelessness within the community. There is a lot of hope, resilience, whatever it takes in order to make a way. This is what the community will do. But in spot 6 with the African American youth, 16 to 24, in some areas the unemployment rate is 49%. And I'm concerned that when you have a youth that is about to get out of high school and having a future, and they strive to look for a job, and all they hear is no, 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 this might scar them in the future, because their first impression is, now I've got out of high school, I'm going to college, and then they apply for a job, and there's nothing there. So the mass incarceration, all of the what's transpiring with the ex-offenders coming into the community, these are our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, and our cousins that are coming back. And so there's no place, with the barrier of unemployment, So back again, what Ernest talked about, there's no one organization that can do it alone, no one agency, no one church, everybody has to come together and deal with collaboration. We look at our political system with the Democrats and with the Republicans. All of them are coming against one another. They can't meet. They can't seem to come to an agreement on anything. They just want to keep the other down despite the needs within the community. I challenge and I urge our community agencies, our work source centers, our educational centers to come together. Don't deal with this is my area, so therefore I can't work with you over here. You know, you have your own little silos, but this is a time within South Los Angeles we all must come together and work together because it's too huge. With our churches, United Job Creation Council, we are a collaboration of churches and faith-based organizations. A couple of pastors within South Los Angeles, Bishop Noel Jones and Bishop Blake and Bishop McClendon, Reverend Lee, and others came together in 2006 and looked at the issues of unemployment concerning construction. And because we focus on construction, construction is one of the few industries that will not hold as a barrier your criminal history. So therefore, we looked at all the construction was taking place in the city of Los Angeles, billions and billions of dollars of construction. So then we got together and started looking at how can we get a local hire initiative passed. Well, thanks to our mayor, Mayor Villaraigosa, there is now a career constructions ladder policy that CRA has adopted, and now Public Works and everything. But that's a way of having access to jobs for our local and at-risk communities. But there's also, we have to go further. We have to look at entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is important because if you can't find a job, then create a job. One of the areas of job creation is small businesses. Small businesses are the ones that do create jobs. So we have to teach our communities to start thinking about entrepreneurship. Manufacturing is something else as well. Looking at the manufacturing industry, right now it's a little bit slow, but it will pick up. President Obama is looking at training at least 50,000 youth in the community, West L.A., El Camino College. They have particularly El Camino College has a manufacturing program. So we're asking our churches, our community-based organizations to network with our colleges on forming programs. But I could go on and on and on because this is so important. This issue is nothing to play with. I'm not sitting here just to talk. I'm sitting here because I thank Commissioner Shaw for seeing the need and the mayor and city council seeing the need. We have to come and talk about real issues that is facing our community. And we all know about the problem, but we have to look at solutions. How can we create jobs? And whenever we go to the table and talk to anyone, it's not about the problem, it's how can we create solutions, out-of-box thinking. What can we do? What resources? How can we work together? And that's why we are here, United Job Creation Council.
Thank you. It seems clear to me that from the community perspective, and as Jean indicated, that there is hope and resiliency, but it is coupled against the huge unemployment rates, the very high dropout rate from high schools, which contributes to a perpetual unemployment and poverty. There is the return of those who have been incarcerated into a community where there are no jobs available. There seems to be a consensus around the need for good-paying jobs, job development, and job training. And if we use this as the framework for whether or not we're being effective in job creation in our community, I think it's appropriate to now look at what the representatives of the City of Los Angeles are doing in their programs and see if their programs are addressing these very specific needs. Now, we talked about soft skills, which is the personal development part. And that ties directly into the lack of opportunity, the lack of education that is continuing to plague our communities. But you're also talking about the development of hard skills, of getting into good-paying jobs. And I think that we'll find that though there are programs that exist that gives us access, does it allow for particularly African Americans to rise up and have sustainable, good-paying jobs? And we'd like to address these things to see if we can come to a conclusion before the end of this panel on whether or not what we're doing now is meeting the needs of South Los Angeles. So I'd like to start with Larry Frank and your position, what you're doing and the programs that you're overseeing to address these needs. Now, you can start with what programs you have and the results that it has produced, but I'd like to focus on whether or not we're addressing the needs and the challenges that we find in South Los Angeles.
Yeah. This is the question that government struggles with around the country, is that in Los Angeles right now, I think we peaked, Greg, at 14.4% official unemployment. I think we're at about 13.1 right now. Unemployment in California is second highest state in the nation. We're second to Nevada. Right? If you add the people that are part-time looking for full-time work and the people that have given up, we're well over 20% citywide. And then you start looking at the communities most impacted, you're in the probably 30s. It is, quite a remarkable landscape. It's remarkable that crime continues to go down. I don't know if it can go down forever. I think there's a lot of conditions that are relevant to the conversation. President Obama did a brilliant thing to actually attempt to stimulate our economy, and he did major pieces of work. We in the city have a fair amount of responsibility for implementing some of the ARA dollars going into stimulating the economy in different parts. We doubled the amount of money, thanks to Obama, going into workforce development. So I think the ultimate answer to the question is, are we addressing the need? We have solutions in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands, right? But we have problems in the hundreds of thousands, right, as a city. So it would be foolish for me to talk about all the great work the city's doing without framing it in the way it needs to be framed, and then add to it the fact that, and I'm just going to say it out loud, even though we're not supposed to be a partisan environment, the Republicans in Congress are fairly radical in their approach, but they literally voted to eliminate all workforce development, earlier this year. We did do a 10% cut as part of the mid-year correction. The 2012 budget fight that's still ahead of us this summer, they're proposing, 30% cuts in community development block grant funds and in Workforce Investment Act funds. So it is a kind of a dire landscape in terms of how it is we're going to get the additional resources to address really, truly the additional needs that are out there in our communities right now. But I can try to speak without sounding too Pollyanna about it, about what we're attempting to do as a city. So a lot of the work that I'm going to speak about is not necessarily just the city's work, but it's the work of the nonprofit world, part of which we fund or support or partner with. For example, USC, we partner with USC on what was our Business Opportunity Center, but it's a direct partnership with USC in terms of working to make sure that small minority women-owned businesses have access to contracts. We do a fair amount of work with UJCC as well on the construction piece, which Gene absolutely identified. Ernest has put his life into this work. John Reamer has put his life into this work. The place where you can't put up a barrier to an ex-offender actually getting a job is in construction, because they get sent out by the union hiring hall, and the employer doesn't decide who I'm going to take or who I'm not going to take. And so we've been able to bring about, in the last 4 years, about 5,000 new apprentices into the construction industry of that. And again, it's not just our work, it's Ernest's work, it's Gene's work, it's, We Build over at LAUSD, but we brought in almost 2,000 new African American apprentices into the construction industry, again, leveraging the ability to bring more work through the union hall so that people have the confidence to bring in new apprentices. So it's a career, not just a job, right? So on the piece of paper that was passed out, you'll see scores of programs. Each one of the lines is a piece of work on the front, and then on the back is all the work we've done to build our summer youth employment programs. So it's an attempt to provide some transparency and some numbers. We're actually in the middle of going from the 5-year plan to the 10-year plan, so not all the numbers are complete. But I could give a couple illustrations of work that's actually targeted. In addition to the construction work, we've been doing a hospitality training program. In this situation, you look for ways in which to leverage other dollars. And so in the hospitality industry, you have about half of it is unionized. In the unionized sector of the hospitality industry, you have training funds that are negotiated. It's a penny per member per hour. It's very small. They never knew how to exactly step up and spend it. They had about $1.2 million who say, okay, we'll invest in the hospitality training program if you match it with your training funds. And it's been so successful that in their last round of negotiations, they're increasing their contribution to the training fund, tripling it to 3 cents per member per hour, and at the airport to 5 cents per member per hour. And as part of that, they invested in an African American boot camp, because quite honestly, African Americans disappeared from the front of the house in the hotel industry. And that was a piece of work that we've invested in, but it's also a piece of work that the hospitality industry has invested in, as well as the hotel employees, restaurant employees. And it's been a very targeted and successful piece of work, but again, it's solving problems in the dozens, actually in the low hundreds, in a situation which is, extremely more demanding than that. The security industry, actually, Lola Smallwood Cuevas put a couple years of her life into how to take security workers that were not being paid a living wage and actually unionize. And in that situation, she was able to, with a huge amount of effort and with a major role and push from the mayor's office, take an industry which is 40%, of the workers are based in South Los Angeles, and take it from a non-living wage job into a living wage job. We also are doing a fair amount of work around green retrofit of our city buildings. Again, with Obama dollars, the president created a new block grant system called the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grants. And that's also a solid piece of work in partnership with Scope, Agenda. Teresa Sanchez, who was working on it from the outside, is now working on it from the inside within the city of Los Angeles. We have 40 people that have just finished the first 15 buildings in terms of energy conservation. A lot of it, the work is based in South Los Angeles and the workforce from South Los Angeles. Same thing at DWP. We put about 4 years of work into creating a pre-civil service classification at DWP called Utility Pre-Craft Trainee. And just 3 weeks ago, we were able to hire our first 35 utility pre-craft trainees. Rather than doing a civil service exam, that would take probably 3,000 people going down to the convention center, and the top 30 reachable people would all live in Palmdale. We actually have the ability to work with our workforce centers to do local hire in a pre-civil service classification of LA workers, LA residents, to do the initial work at Department of Water and Power on our energy efficiency programs, weatherization programs, and eventually our solar programs. So if you go through, I could give, there's a narrative on every single line of the different programs that are on the 8.5 by 14 piece of paper, but that just gives you a couple highlights. I know I'm going on too long, but I think it's important that people realize that we're doing major sector-based training programs, which is strategy number 1 on your paper. We're leveraging all of our connections between the city, the county, the community college district, and LAUSD in terms of training opportunities and placement opportunities, which is strategy 2. We're leveraging all of our contracts and all of our hiring for LA residents, for the to support LA residents. Again, these are all new programs from this administration to be able to do local hiring, both on contracts in terms of construction, but local contract in terms of personal service contracts with first source hiring systems, and local hiring in terms of city hiring, which relates to the vocational worker programs like the utility pre-craft trainee position I explained. I see the airport is here. They have the most robust of the local hiring programs actually in the city, and they're actually importing that over to, or exporting it to DWP right now. The fourth area is about youth employment, and on the back we're going to have, we had almost a potential disaster on our hands last summer, thanks to, again, President Obama. We had 16,000 young people with summer jobs. This summer, as we looked at it, because quite honestly the Republicans cut it off, any kind of federal support for youth employment. During the lame duck session, it got to 58 votes in the Senate. It had already passed in the House, but not one Republican vote would go for it, and so they were able to make sure it didn't continue this summer. We were going to go down to about 1,500, so from 16,000 down to 1,500. This is the summer where we actually go to traditional schools in almost every single campus. I think there's 2 left that are non-traditional. So this is the summer where all of our kids were going to be out looking for a summer job. And this was the summer that we were about to fall off a cliff. You'll look on the back and you'll see that we're going to probably get up to about 6,000. We'll go from 16,000 to about 6,000. We've been able to put together about $7.5 million from a bunch of different sources. It's been really difficult, hard work to get there. Each one of them is a different program. But that's the world that we live in at the moment. And then the next 2 strategies is about work we do with labor to turn non-living wage jobs into living wage jobs. And then the 6th category is what we do in terms of economic development. So for example, LA Live is going to be about 3,500 jobs for LA residents. It has a community benefits agreement with a requirement of living wage jobs on the permanent jobs. And we do that on a number of other of our economic development activity in the city. So those are the ways in which the city has the ability to solve problems in the thousands, but not anymore. Thank you.
You know, and I appreciate the work that the city is doing in that regards, but we're still facing a very high unemployment rate, particularly amongst African American males. You made reference to a 20% unemployment rate for the city of Los Angeles, and as Gene had indicated, we're at about between the age of 16 and 34, a 49% unemployment rate. So somewhere with the programs that we have, there's a disconnect, and we need to understand where that disconnect is occurring. I'd like to go to Greg Irish. He's with the Workforce Investment Board. And can you let us know what you're seeing out there, understanding the framework that we have this high unemployment, we have this huge dropout rate in high school. and despair, yet some resiliency and hope for a brighter future. What are you finding out there through the Workforce Investment Board?
Yes, Eric, I'm sort of the guy that believes the glass is half full. I think we're doing some great things. I think Gene alluded to it in terms of collaborations that are going on with John, and I think Larry also alluded to it. We're looking at city assets. When you look at this plan, we're looking at the potential of community-based organizations to solve these problems, but I think what we're finding is we simply don't have enough resources in terms of funding, and Larry also alluded to that in terms of what's happening with Washington. We're expecting with our $60 million plan, and we put together a $60 million plan, as I said, that was approved by the council yesterday. That plan is a living document in terms of the different strategies we're going to use to combat unemployment in this city. But that plan, again, may be impacted by what goes on in Washington. We have a commitment of $60 million, but we don't know what will happen in this debate in terms of reducing the federal deficit. What we're finding is that we have sufficient money to train minor amounts of people, our work source centers, and those are our employment centers throughout the city. The adult employment centers are branded under the name work source centers. The youth employment centers are branded under the name one source centers, and we have a number of them in South Los Angeles. Throughout the city, we have 18 adult work source centers, 18 employment centers, of which 6 are in South L.A. We have 13 youth employment centers or one-source centers, of which maybe 5 are in South Los Angeles. You can walk into any one of those centers and receive assistance in terms of how to find a job, or you can also access job training. And we know the answer is education. So job training and education are synonymous, and that's what we're trying to do. But as the Deputy Mayor said, we have enough money to deal with the thousands. We don't have enough money to deal with the hundreds of thousands, and that is the problem. Currently in the city of L.A., on the books, there are 250,000 people out of work. That's on the books. Those are the ones we're able to count. We know that number is not really an accurate number. That's what the federal government uses to actually publish its unemployment numbers, but that really doesn't reflect what's going on in the community. What are the challenges right now? Well, California, specifically LA, as one of the biggest manufacturing centers, has lost thousands of jobs. And you know why. We were impacted by the meltdown that happened with the financial sector. Housing is an important element of California's economy, Los Angeles' economy. We had a meltdown in the housing industry. We have a number of jobs that have been offshored. Whether those jobs will ever come back is in question. What we've tried to do is anticipate what industries have the greatest potential for creating living wage jobs, what industries will materialize after this recession is over. And by the way, the economists have said the recession is over, if you believe it. The recession supposedly is over. I don't believe that. But we've looked at that in the plan, and we've tried to anticipate what industries will create jobs after the recession is over. And those jobs, they're jobs that pay living wages and that are not likely to be offshored, not likely to leave the country. And that's basically how we've come up with our multiple strategies for dealing with the unemployment issues in this city. So we've provided programming and funding for nonprofit organizations, the majority of them are nonprofit organizations, to tackle those issues, to train folks for what is going to be the changing Los Angeles economy, the industries that are likely to come out of this and are going to create jobs. And those sectors, of course, are hospitality, construction, and when I say hospitality, tourism, construction, of course we know healthcare because of the aging baby boomer population, security, after 9/11, security, everyone is concerned about security. So we've got a number of different sectors, banking, the financial industry, and we've focused all of our efforts on those sectors to create, those sectors are going to create jobs, and we're going to train for those jobs that are likely to materialize from those sectors. Again, if you need that kind of assistance, you simply walk into one of those work source centers. They can help you find a job. They can also provide you with access to training. Now, what we haven't seen, quite frankly, on the economic development side, we expected there to be jobs. We haven't come out of that yet in terms of jobs being created. We're training for the jobs that are likely to materialize. But quite frankly, we need further stimulus of the economy to create those jobs. And that's the challenge that we're still facing. So that plan is available. It's available on the WIBS website. It's also available on the city website, the Community Development Department website. We, again, have $60 million to deal with a problem that perhaps is requires triple that budget. And as a matter of fact, with the Obama dollars, we used that money to actually expand our programs. We have to retract our programs in light of what's happening with the federal government. So the challenges in terms of getting a job, well, we know that most jobs are going to require a higher skill level. The jobs that that simply required a high school diploma have left and they're not coming back. Most of the jobs that are going to be created are going to require some form of education in terms of post-secondary. It could be a course with community colleges. It could be a 2-year degree. Those are the jobs we're going to have to train for. We're making more and more investments in job training, and that we see as the best path for trying to combat this situation, or at least put a Band-Aid on the situation.
Great. Let me ask you a question, and thank you very much. But let's go to Greg at CDD. See, this challenge has existed for decades in South Los Angeles. And when you see development going on in other communities, part of Los Angeles, but we don't see this development going on in South Los Angeles, what is your assessment of why we are not having economic development like other communities? And suffice it to say, I think job training is absolutely necessary, soft skills, hard skills, but if the jobs are not there, if the industries are not there, what are we really doing? And so if you could address that. And then after that, what I want to do, and John, I haven't forgotten you, that what we want to do is engage in a dialogue between the panelists, because I see that the community members have been taking notes on what has been said by the city programs. I want the dialogue to come between them so that we can liven up this discussion. So if you could address the issue of why it's not happening in South L.A. like it is in other communities.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Appreciate the time. I think you really need to drill down to the lowest common denominator, and to be quite candid with you, it really starts with education. We find, and I want to actually comment on what Ernest said in regards to Spot 6. We find right now that because of the fact that our young people are not fully engaged in the educational process, when they graduate or leave school, they're not ready. They're not equipped. So as in terms of the employer base looking at a young person, say, are you ready? Do you have the hard skills? Do you have the soft skills? Can you actually read a document? Can you follow directions? That has been an issue. And some of the things that the department has done, and one thing that I really want to say thank you to the city, thank you to President Obama. The 2009 ARA, which is American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, was a godsend. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, as in terms of workforce development, as in terms of really being able to create those training opportunities so our young people, so our adults living in our community can actually thrive, wasn't there. It was kind of dark, you know, under the previous administration. But in 2009, there was a ray of hope. The ray of hope is saying that, hey, just like Mr. Irish said, have to prepare our young people, have to prepare our adults for the future. And this is where the training arm came in. The city was afforded the opportunity to actually drill down and really talk about some of these specific areas or specific issues in regards to young people. As we all know, the report, the 1 out of 5 report, basically saying that 1 out of 5 young people between the ages of 16 and really 21, 24, in the city of Los Angeles are not working and they're not in school. Okay, so what we did back then, 2009, was actually work with the department, work with the city to basically say, look, we want to create a activity or a program focused on young people between the ages of 21 and 24 to get them re-engaged. We were able to do that, and in the South Los Angeles, and this is where I come in, because as the director of that particular area, I am most concerned with young people graduating from Jordan High School, graduating from Crenshaw High School, and can't read beyond the 3rd grade level. That's absolutely unacceptable. So what we did, we engaged 3 workforce centers in South Los Angeles to be a part of this reconnection program, okay, providing young people with the opportunity to go back to school, to get some type of training, but thirdly, and most importantly, to get some type of work experience in that particular area.
Now, are there jobs available? John Reamer, are there jobs available in South Los Angeles that contribute to economic development and have a place for all these training programs that are going on for our youth? And then after that, then let's open it up to the panel to question this issue.
Reverend Lee, you hit the nail on the head. We all know the saying, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. The city made a commitment, this very building that we sit in today, after the Northridge earthquake, an elected official asked the question, how many of the workers live in the city of Los Angeles? Less than 2% of the workers that worked to retrofit this building after the Northridge earthquake lived in the city of Los Angeles, county of Los Angeles. What does that mean? That means we obviously had jobs. The question is, are we going to be committed to making sure that a portion of those jobs go to those men and women who live in the city of Los Angeles? Commissioner Valerie Shaw took on the baton of saying, we will, in the Department of Public Works, provide a mechanism. We've heard the word partnering, we've heard the word leverage, we've heard the word accountability. We use that to phrase this word, project labor agreement. Project labor agreement for the city of Los Angeles has been a way of life for the past 10 years. And when Mayor Villaraigosa came into office, he said, let's take it to another level. What we said was, yes, we do have jobs. We're going to make sure that those jobs are directed toward those men and women who live in the city of Los Angeles. We want to, Greg spoke to shining a ray of hope. We call it light, lifting individuals, giving hope today. We had $1 billion in our capital improvement projects that we said we're going to dedicate making sure, which means that we as a city agency are going to be committed to reinvesting into those men and women who live in the city by making sure that we partner with those who can train properly, we leverage what we bring to the table and what all of our partners bring to the table. That would be the city agencies, that would be the contractors, and that would be you, the community, and then we hold all of us accountable. We transparently provide through our website every single one of our projects for everyone in the world to see what our contractors are doing, what job opportunities we have, and how well we're providing those opportunities for the men and women who live in the city of Los Angeles. So do we have projects? Most certainly we do. At Los Angeles World Airports, we're doing over $1 billion worth of work under project labor agreements. Public Works, we just signed a 5-year project labor agreement for $2.3 billion worth of work. Public project labor agreement. Port of Los Angeles, $1.5 billion worth of work. Project labor agreement. Community Redevelopment Agency, project labor agreement. What we're saying is that it's not enough for us to see you sit on a corner or walk around and not have an opportunity. We want to make sure that we use what we have to give you hope. You spoke about education. I'm making sure that every one of my children have what it takes to get to college, but I also understand not every one of them will want to go to college. Opportunities are real, and the one job that's not going to be sent overseas is construction. Your front yard, that street, that sidewalk, that traffic signal, that street light, that's all public works construction that I tell you what, you're not going to have someone else come in here and do it. You need to make sure that those who are here are trained to do that. We have an aged workforce. They're going to retire one day. What are we doing to replace that workforce? When I was in the 8th grade, and I'm not going to tell my age here, but by the time I hit the 8th grade, I had wood shop, metal shop, home economics in public school. That does not exist today. So how are we going to be able to provide that opportunity? It's not to say that a young person won't go to college, but what I don't want them to do is drop out before the momentum kicks in and they say, okay, fine, I've dug a trench long enough, I've pulled wire long enough, now I'd like to take it to another level. I graduated, my mother made me go to college. After I did that, my father made me get a trade. But now I'm sitting as a general manager in the Department of Public Works, the second largest city in the nation. Why? Because I parlayed both of them to take advantage of opportunity. So what is the city of Los Angeles doing? We're making sure that the jobs that we have, we're telling all of our contractors, this is a way of life. When you come into the city of Los Angeles, you're going to set aside 30% of all of the work hours that are going to be done on this project for men and women who live in the city of L.A. The community has pledged they're going to find those men and women and bring them to the trades who've pledged. They're going to train those men and women so the contractors will not lose their profit, which they want to make, and we want them to make, and we're going to all benefit. It's a reinvestment that we all have to commit to. The community is lacking credibility in our eyes. Not that we don't trust them, they don't trust us.
Okay.
They don't trust us in our job, and that's what the mayor has been committed to, is saying, we want you to trust us. And the way we're going to show you that we're worthy of having your trust is delivering. Of all of the projects that we have, over 32% of the workers on these projects live in the city of Los Angeles. 20% is a requirement for apprentices. We have 23%. We put over 600 first-period apprentices on our projects. Larry already spoke to the number of African Americans that are brought in. This is a partnership that involves all of us in this room. It does not happen without us. There was an article in the LA Times, I believe it was 2 days ago. It spoke to the impact that's happening on minority males in this country. African American, Asian American, Latinos, Native Americans. It didn't signal out one. It said we have a national problem that we need to fix. This is a perfect forum to do it. I'm pleased to be here. I probably went longer than I needed to.
No, you're just fine. I'd like to open up an opportunity for the panelists to question one another, since we have community and city representatives here. Lola, do you have a question that you'd like to ask?
Well, I have just a comment. I appreciate what John laid out and Larry, and I think you're right. I think it is about us. Oh, you can't hear? I think it is about us understanding the challenges and being real about those challenges. And I think that, you know, the work around the project labor agreements and the work around local hiring is right, and I think it should be extended to other industries, right? Not just construction. So I'm glad to hear that DWP and renewable energy and looking at that as a way of building apprenticeship. I think looking at healthcare and how do we build apprenticeship, mentoring and training for folks to get into those opportunities as well. But I think I just want us to realize that we're talking about a crisis that is two-dimensional. One is unemployment and people needing access to jobs. The other is people working poor, having to work 2 and 3 really bad jobs. And I think the issue we have to put on the table is, what is the mechanism for enforcement around both pieces? So you mentioned the project labor agreements, and we just went through a major process looking at Martin Luther King Hospital and how we're going to ensure that those are quality construction jobs created. It took 8 months, right, to convince that board that you needed to have local hiring and to have a project labor agreement at Martin Luther King Hospital in Watts, right, where there is tremendous unemployment. So it's not an easy thing, and many policymakers and many industries do not see that as the model. They don't see having regulated jobs where people earn fair wages, where people have health benefits, where people have retirement as a goal. And so as a community and as public entities, we have to make that a priority at every level. But we also have to make sure that it's happening. How do you monitor $2.3 billion worth of work to make sure not just that the people who say they live at 105 South Street in Los Angeles actually live at 105 South Street in Los Angeles? We hear all the time those challenges. We also have to understand that Prop 209 has done a lot around who gets access to work, right? And historically, we know it's been a 400-year struggle for African Americans to get access to construction industry. And over the years, since the 1960s and 70s, in affirmative action, there was a lot of movement for that to happen. But since Prop 209, there's been a brick wall. And so when you look and you drive around the different sites, you do not see African Americans in high representation. And when we look more closely at the data, where you see apprentices, everyone loves an apprentice. An apprentice is someone who's in training. And so they're brought in at a much lower rate. So they don't care if the apprentice is purple. They want that apprentice on the job, right? So you see high levels of apprentices working. But when you see workers with journeyman skills, journeyman status who are earning the higher wages, you see very few African Americans. In fact, the number drops to about 3.5%, 4%, right? So I think that we have to have policies that create the vehicle, and I really recognize you, John, for your commitment to that, from being transparent and making that data available. I think the City of LA is the only entity that's really doing that. We don't see it at the airport. We don't see it. Obviously, we're at the county level. We're starting to see it now so that the community can monitor, but I do think where is the opportunity for better enforcement? Where is the opportunity for ensuring that women, for example, are on these construction jobs, that African American workers are in real numbers in terms of if you're building in Watts and the community is 40% African American, how is that community that's funding that project represented on that job site? And so I think we have a ways to go in maturing these policies and creating public and private community partnerships around being fiscally responsible. If we're saying these are public dollars and that we're reinvesting to create stimulus in our local economies, how do we make sure that stimulus is happening in the poorest and most disadvantaged communities by ensuring that those workers are in fact there? And I know that that's been a challenge, right? Making sure that there's the adequate number of jobs coordinators. In many cases, the company themselves, the construction contractors, actually hire and pay the monitoring. And so we just have to make sure that there's a way for us to improve upon enforcement. And I think that goes into some of the other industries too. You mentioned construction, you mentioned healthcare. These are industries that are more and more growing unregulated, right? Where we see workers are losing wages, wage theft, workers not earning the monies that they are entitled to.
Right. So
I just want to wrap up. I just want to say that the challenge that we have to put on the table now that we have policies that create local hiring and opportunity, is the enforcement and ensuring that there is representation. And then I will wrap up that I do believe there should be more conversation with community organizations that are doing this work. There have been two major victories. The Korean Immigrant Workers Association, through great collaboration with the CRA, won a victory of having a community center and a park built as part of a project that is planned in Koreatown. The first time that a community center has been built. But this happened, at the floor of the hearing. Where are there opportunities for communities that really want to see jobs, that really want to see local hiring, to sit down with developers and have a process of facilitating the conversations so that we can ensure that the community benefits are happening and that we're extracting them in a way that does address these challenges.
So if I can just, accountability and monitoring are the key issues in ensuring that the programs that you have, the job opportunities that are available, are getting to the people who need them most. What we're going to do now is open up to public comment for those in the audience and the community who would like to ask questions and engage the panelists on these issues of where are the jobs in Los Angeles, the future for South Los Angeles, and how we make these programs effective for the people who need them most. Are there any comments or questions from the audience?
Moderator and panel, I'm Pastor William Monroe Campbell of the Mount Gilead Missionary Baptist Church. And there are two people that are missing on this panel. One is the educational community. Everybody here has made reference to education. And in 1933, Carter G. Woodson wrote a book entitled The Miseducation of the Negro Child. This nation has never responded to that, and in fact has systematically devalued the Negro child, and you've talked about it, Gene, quite well in terms of the black male. My question is, what dialogue is happening to affect what we're doing in terms of from infancy on, so that they have a sense of not being the descendants of slaves where they're owned and controlled by somebody else, but where they begin to take ownership of their own lives and ownership of the community. Pastor Rima made reference to the role that his mother and father played in shaping his identity, so that he went forward with a self-defined identity, self-defined in terms of what his parents had imputed to him. What is happening to create that self-definition for the emerging generation, if we're talking about the future, for the black child, the Latino child, and all children, but those are in the center point of our community because we're defining them as nothing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your question. Any of the panelists would like to answer?
Thank you for that question. One of the things that United Job Creation Council did, and understand that we are a driven organization by our pastors and our churches. And last year, our churches came together and our pastors under an alliance called the Los Angeles Alliance of Ministers and Pastors. And we get our direction from our churches. And so they had a focus group on identifying the issues that they saw the need within their church congregation and their surrounding communities. And 3 initiatives, 3 primary topics came about, or needs came about. That was employment, literacy, and fatherhood. They took a vote to find out which of the 3 was the most important. Fatherhood was the most important, being the fact that the fathers should be the primary focus within the child's life. So then what these churches did, they started to meet on the issue of fatherhood. And what they're currently meeting now to develop a strategy on how they can actually go within their own churches, with their surrounding communities, and talking and bringing fathers together and having the fathers be the leader in teaching and educating and putting value to their children, focusing on education as well, because literacy and unemployment and fatherhood all are wrapped together with the issue of fathers being a strategic value and importance to their child's life. Because if the child feels insignificant, it is a role of the parent. It is the mother that nurtures the child. It is the father that protects the child, brings security to the child. So if they don't have that component of knowing that they are valued primarily by their father and their mother, then you're going to have all these problems. So this issue of our children and the role of the parent, the role of the father when it comes to education, being that parent, teaching that child, being important with the teachers, going to PTA meetings, advocating for that child's education, making sure if there is a need within that school area and it's not being met, those fathers will band together. They will come to the school board as a collective voice and make a demand. So nothing moves unless there is a demand. Power will not move unless there is a demand. But in order to make a demand, you got to know what your issues are. You got to be clear on your issues. You got to be clear on a plan or direction that you want to take place, because power moves up. Okay, things move from the ground level. It's the grassroots, it's the parents, it's the fathers making the demand on what they know is important in the role of their children. So I guess what I'm saying is that what the churches are doing is looking at the issue of fatherhood and literacy and employment and developing a plan around, and then coming as a power base, a collective power base with the plan and saying, here's our plan, school district, this is what we want for our community and for our children.
One of the challenges that I see in that is that many of these fathers are the ones looking for employment.
Yes.
And so we have this vicious cycle that continues to occur in our community. And so I think Pastor Campbell's right when it comes to education being the key for people being prepared to work. But we have this cycle of a failed education system, not for the future generation, but for generations that have passed, which has created a problem with the fathers being able to find employment. And so, you know, what comes first, the cart or the horse? And so what I'd like the panel to do is if we were clear that education is the key for finding employable people, since we have jobs, then how do we address that issue? I want to go to, we're going to go to a community and then we can circle back, but if we can have the next comment or question.
My name's Larry Gonzalez from All People's Christian Center. And I've been in the areas, Vernon Central area for 21 years now, and it's a continuous problem. You know, talk is cheap, you know what I mean? And frankly, you get tired of it. But you know, you look at that community, and you can get a strong effort to build a football field in an area that most of the residents in South LA can't afford anyway, but you can't get the effort to build movie theaters and everything else in the Vernon Central area. And if the city put the effort into that and redeveloping that area, look at the jobs that you would create there. Not only there's no movie theaters in that area. You have to go to USC, which is a small theater. You have to go Baskin Robbins. Jan Perry, at least there was some, with CRA built a Fresh and Easy that was long in coming, Superior Market that was long in coming. And yet, I agree with somebody that said, hire from within. Don't hire without, hire within. You give people nonprofit, even the nonprofit community, you say involve them, but yet nonprofits are in a lot of trouble. So only a select few get the monies to work the WIA programs or do the other programs. I'm very surprised that there's so many WIA programs in South LA, because most of the emails I get are from Eric Starter Probation, and they're all WIA workforce centers in the Valley. So I was very surprised that you said that. So and then there's a lot of paperwork to get involved. So you get discouraged, and then you pick and choose who you're going to hire because you want to make your record straight. Let's be honest here. You got the school systems that are failing this system, this area really bad. You got Santee with a partnership with the mayor's office, yet it's got almost a 50% dropout rate. Do something like the county does, where they hire teachers within incentive programs with a school like USC. You challenge you because you got a lot of area there, you're rich. Pay for the kids to go into a teaching school. Give them the incentives to go into the high schools and create these incentives. You go here, you guaranteed to go to college, you'll have a teaching position. Who else is going to care more about South LA than the kids that actually grew up there?
Yeah, and I would add that there's a project in the Marlton Square area. That area has been blighted for years, and that would provide job opportunities for our communities, but it's just sitting there. So, you know, we need to look at some very practical projects that bring some livable wage jobs to our communities. I understand that the work that you're doing in training is good, but the future of LA really depends upon educating our children and having them prepared.
But also, there's a demographic of that age, my age, the 50s to the 60s to 65, that you can't forget. If we lose these jobs, we don't have health insurance. It's just gonna be worse too. So what are you doing for that challenge too? Because all of them educated, or they want to go lower wages and stuff. But what are you doing to create jobs for that age demographic also?
So thank you. Does anybody from the panel like to address that issue? Okay.
I just want to address what the good pastor was saying here a minute ago, and what the gentleman, Larry, was talking. He was talking about the misinformation or the diseducation of the African American male. It seems to me he's talking about the specific information that African Americans, especially young African Americans, need to develop pride and to overcome some of the obstacles that they're getting into. And that sounds like a great opportunity for a program design. I would encourage you to think about perhaps thinking it through, getting with some collaborators, and working towards a solution, some kind of curriculum or some kind of a program design that can help address that. I know we did a lot of that in the 60s, but somehow it fell off, and that would be a good thing for you to just want to bring that up. In terms of the investment, we've been talking about investing in this community all along, the lack of investment in the local area, which we need, which will bring jobs. And it's not just the construction jobs, as was intimated, but it is also the professional trade jobs that will come along with the installation of the facility or whatever is being built there. So,
We have about 5 minutes left, so I want to get to as many of the questions as we can.
All right.
My name is Linda Wilson, and I am a native Los Angelino. I am a product of LA Unified when LA Unified was a real school district. You have to go back and look at the history. I graduated in a class of 900. We had 800 of our students had scholarships to colleges. What are we going to do about changing this curriculum in the school that is outdated? LA Unified worked. What happened?
Thank you.
Hello. So just sitting here and listening to the panel speak, I think we're dancing around a big issue and saying that South LA does not have jobs, and just plain and simple, we have to start from there, admitting that. The next step is also identifying the jobs that are there that we're just holding down, whether it's politics or whatever it is that's holding these jobs down. We need to identify and address that. One major issue is the South Central Farm. I know that for a long history, the South Central Farm has been there. Now it's no longer there. That place is a potential for jobs in South LA. The next thing I want to add is we can't call South LA until it becomes South LA. We want to say it's South LA because we're renewing it, we're making a better place, and we're removing the crime and improving it. It's South Central. South Central until we make it better. South Central until we bring jobs. So I want to leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to say, again, from the community's perspective, the jobs are not there. And so if we're talking about the future of South Los Angeles, we have to make the connection between the programs that you have and real practical jobs in our communities.
Good morning. My name is Jorge Nuno. I'm the founder of Novel South, and also I'm a business owner of an advertising marketing agency for the entertainment industry. I moved my office about 4 years ago to South Los Angeles, and what I've discovered, there's a lack of advocacy to even bring the entertainment industry to come in and film in South LA. So having to discover that the last few months, I've been working with some of the location scouts in South LA, and I have like now 3 films coming into South LA to shoot. But what they were telling me is that they didn't know anyone in this community to come in and to film, or they need a liaison. And so I'm thinking, well, what are we doing to advocate new industries to come in? Technology is really arising. A lot of our residents use computers, so there's IT people that need to help them with their computers. There's the entertainment, there's mobile technology. There's a lot of industries out there that you could do it off your home, but some of these kids are not exposed to these industries. So I think we just need to expose this youth to some of these industries that could be done at home. They're like scientists. The little kids could be coding and.
Again, we're speaking to the issue of education. Yeah.
Right.
And so.
But what I'm saying is we need to advocate some of these jobs to come to this community, some of these industries, and I think we have the human capital to do it.
All right, thank you very much.
Hello all. My name is Pearl Lonig. I'm the community organizer with the Los Angeles Black Workers Center. And I'm not asking a question, it's more so a comment. We're talking about the issue of education, which I'm very much an advocate for. It's important to think about how to reinvent the curriculum within the K through 12, but it's also important to think about education on a holistic level, right? It's not just about like how you can do math and English, but it's also about knowing your rights when you do get employment. So how can you ensure that the youth as well as folks in our community are educated on that fact? In addition to that, like education on policy level, like what policies are in place that are there to help me. Oftentimes we are not educated on that, and so that way, in that manner, we're not able to advocate for ourselves. So I think it's important to think about education in a holistic manner instead of just on a K through 12 model.
Thank you.
That's it. It's more so a comment.
And I think that speaks to the issue on the effectiveness of communicating what programs from the City of Los Angeles are designed to serve the people of South Los Angeles.
My name is Carrie Sutkin, and I'm an urban planning consultant. I do a lot of pro bono work in South LA and East LA, and I just wanted to make you aware of some programs that are very effective with young people, starting at the high school 16-year-old level, and they're modeled after the California Conservation Corps. That's the Los Angeles Conservation Corps, the San Gabriel Valley Conservation Corps, and the Coalition for Responsible Community Development. And what makes them so great is that they start working with the young people, teaching them a sense of community service, giving them the skills. Maybe not, it's not the big, sexy construction job, but it's the recycling, the bulky item removal, the graffiti removal, the things that might prevent investment. And, you know, home investment in South LA teaches them a sense of community service. And those are also jobs that stay in the city of Los Angeles eventually, maybe the 911, the 311, and student worker jobs that the county has offered for many, many years could be an entree level too. So I support the efforts, but let's think broader, out of the silos, integrate with schools that are working. These LACCs have charter schools where they integrate this vocational training, environmental training, solar panel training, and environmental education.
Thank you. And the last comment or question.
Good morning. My name is Omar Rushdan, represent Bilal Islamic Center on Central and King. I'm also a Dorsey High School graduate, later on a Howard University graduate. And I just want to put some words in there and some suggestions, commitment and sacrifice. One on our behalf, those folks who have the resources to give, plus that must be translated to the community, commitment and sacrifice. These are old words that we used to use. They've kind of been thrown out nowadays. Many people here talked about mentorship. If we're going to truly be about mentorship, it must start at 6 and 7 years old. It cannot start at 16 and 24. It's too late. The community that I was raised in, I'll call it what we call it, the jungles, gang initiation starts at 7 and 8 years old. And so if you're talking about 16, that is much, much too late. Another issue we must address is unethical leadership. And I say that as a person who's traveled and who's an entrepreneur right now, traveled extensively in the country as well as outside. When the resources come in, if it's in the hands of unethical leadership, it will not be transferred. And so we have to address these real human issues. And I say this as not a Republican or a Democrat. I say this as my politics is production. And so if we're going to make these things happen, we have to hit them at the core. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to, let's give the panel a hand for their comments here. And I want the panelists to take 20 seconds each with a closing remark for the future of South LA. What do we do to bring jobs into the residents who need them most in South LA? We can start with you, Greg.
What we must do is really provide more of a marketing, because I think that there's so many opportunities, but a lot of employers, a lot of businesses, they're not aware of what can happen in South LA.
Okay.
Especially, I just want to say, especially in the area of Watts, it's a tremendous opportunity, but we just have to market it a little bit better.
Okay. Greg?
I think the potential in terms of the greatest asset of South LA is the human capital, the people who are there. Obviously, we spend money in that community. We have a great deal of spending power. We've got to start making some decisions and convincing folks that our dollars are worth everybody else's. And I think we need to couple that with what's going on with government in terms of the assets that government has in South LA to create jobs.
Okay, thank you. Lola?
I think we need to, about that. Thank you. Build relationships, collaborate, empower, and mobilize. I think those are the things we need to do in South LA. Building relationships, public, private, community, advocates, helping us to understand what the conditions are, and then moving our communities around, leveraging jobs and opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
I would just say advocacy at the federal, state, local level. There's no replacement for it. It is a time we cannot at all sleep on that front. And then I would say partnership. Where some of the jobs are, where we've been looking is at the port and the airport in terms of job generators for the region. How do we connect up all of our opportunities, port and airport, logistics, construction, elsewhere, to South Los Angeles? That's a key piece of policy work, and we should all see that opportunity as well as support the institutions that are there.
Yeah, I think collaboration for sure, but I do think that it requires grassroots organizing. I think it requires, we have the human capital in terms of the intelligence in South LA and people that have an interest in this subject to come together, think outside the box, think of solutions to how we can bring this to fruition, and then organize ourselves to support our electeds who are fighting on our behalf and to give them the the muscle that they need to move forward in Washington and wherever.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion. It could go on all day, obviously. I echo everything that's been said. I think the order of the day, for so many reasons, not just across the country but around the world, is coming together, collaborate, build partnerships and strong relationships with a healthy dose of innovation and out-of-the-box thinking, as Jean had mentioned earlier, because it's going to be the community coming together and us uplifting our own whole that's going to make the biggest difference, leveraging the resources and really watchdogging those especially. But there's much more ground to take on what we're missing that's slipping through our fingers, I believe, in the lack of stronger partnership.
Thank you. John, please.
Passionate partnership that challenges to affect change. There's a young lady in this room that you will probably hear her speak on this later. She says, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. You are the power. You are the community. Continue to speak. We're listening.
My last words is, we already have the plan. We know what works. Community organizing is key. If we can get individuals like the Koch brothers to finance the Tea Party, we surely within South Los Angeles can get our grandmas and our grandfathers and our brothers and sisters and the pastors and the churches to organize, because there are already jobs out there, great infrastructure jobs. But in order to make sure that the resources come into our community, that we're not overlooked, there must be mass community organizing as such has not been done before. Nonviolent, but community organizing, strategic community organizing. We must collaborate together with both the city and all of these agencies, but nothing is going to change unless it comes from the ground up, from the grassroots level up.
So it sounds like that the resources are there, that the job opportunity is there, but we have to do a much better job in collaborating between the city, state, and federal, and our community organizations with some accountability, some monitoring, and simply having the political will to spend the money where it needs to be spent. And it boils down to having that political will and foresight. So the future of South Los Angeles really depends upon all of us engaging in the challenges that we face and exercising the political will to fix the challenges in South Los Angeles. Thank you very much. Thank the panelists, and thank Valerie Shaw.
Wonderful applause. We want to thank this panel.